Harry sat at his kitchen table, the early morning light streaming in through the window, casting soft golden hues across the room. An untouched cup of coffee sat in front of him, steam curling lazily upward as it cooled. He'd been up for hours, his mind racing, trying to piece together the puzzle that had been laid before him. The zoo incident gnawed at him. The more he thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. Why would someone go to such lengths to reveal the wizarding world, using such rudimentary and seemingly pointless magical tricks? A disillusionment charm to hide a boa constrictor. It was almost laughable in its simplicity, yet it had been compelling enough to create chaos and suspicion among the muggles. Harry rubbed a hand over his face, his thoughts swirling. It wasn't just the incident that bothered him, it was the intent behind it. Using magic in such a public, uncontrolled setting was reckless and dangerous. But what really troubled him was the purpose. Whoever was behind this wasn't just playing around. There was a reason for it, and that reason was what kept Harry up at night. He leaned back in his chair, staring out the window as he tried to put himself in the mind of the person responsible. Was this some kind of twisted joke? A way to mock the Ministry's efforts to keep the wizarding world hidden from muggles? Or was it something more sinister? A deliberate attempt to expose their world, to force a confrontation between the magical and non-magical communities? But why? That was the question that gnawed at him the most. What could possibly be gained from such reckless exposure? And who would be daring, or foolish, enough to try it? Harry closed his eyes, sifting through the possibilities. It could be a rogue wizard, someone with a grudge against the Ministry or a desire to see the two worlds collide. Or perhaps it was a group, small, radical, and determined to upend the status quo. There were always whispers in the darker corners of the wizarding world about those who believed that wizards and muggles should no longer be kept separate, who wanted to see magic return to its former glory, no matter the cost. But whoever it was, they were playing a dangerous game. The delicate balance between the two worlds had been maintained for centuries, and any disturbance could have catastrophic consequences. If muggles began to suspect the truth, it wouldn't just be a matter of curiosity. It could lead to fear, panic, and conflict. Harry frowned, tapping his fingers against the table as he thought. He had seen enough during the war to know what fear and desperation could drive people to do. The wizarding world might be small, but it was powerful, and if pushed into a corner, some wouldn't hesitate to fight back. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his thoughts. Speculation wouldn't get him anywhere. He needed facts, leads, and something concrete to go on. But so far, all he had was a string of strange incidents and a gut feeling that something much bigger was at play. Harry's gaze drifted to the clock on the wall. He was supposed to head into the station soon, but the idea of going through another day of routine paperwork and mundane cases felt unbearable. How could he focus on the ordinary when something extraordinary was happening under their noses? And yet he knew he had to keep up appearances. He couldn't afford to draw attention to himself or his suspicions. Not yet, anyway. But that didn't mean he had to give up. It made him more determined to get to the bottom of this. He would find out who was behind these incidents and stop them before they could do any real damage. Whoever they were, they had underestimated him. They might be able to fool the muggles and even the Ministry, but Harry Potter was a different story. He had faced worse threats than this, and he wasn't about to let some shadowy figure or group disrupt the fragile peace that had been so hard won. Harry stood up, grabbing his coat from the back of the chair and heading for the door. He might not have all the answers yet, but he knew where to start looking. And if there was one thing he had learned over the years, the truth had a way of revealing itself, especially when you were determined to find it. As he stepped out into the crisp morning air, Harry's resolve hardened. Whoever was behind this had made a mistake, a mistake that would cost them dearly. Harry wasn't just going to investigate this, he was going to end it. Harry arrived at the London Police Department a little later than usual, his mind still spinning with unanswered questions. He pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the bustling office. The familiar sounds of ringing phones, clacking keyboards, and low murmurs of conversation surrounding him. The open floor plan was alive with activity as officers worked on various cases, their focus shifting between paperwork and the occasional call. Harry made his way to his desk, offering nods of greeting to a few colleagues as he passed by. He dropped his coat onto the back of his chair and sat down, trying to shake off the lingering unease from his morning thoughts. He'd barely had time to power up his computer when his partner, Officer Jenkins, approached with a serious expression. Jenkins was a stocky man with greying hair and a perpetual frown, the kind of officer who had seen it all and didn't have time for nonsense. "Morning, Potter," Jenkins greeted him curtly, placing a file on Harry's desk. "Hope you haven't settled in too much. We've just got a signal. Looks like we're heading out." Harry looked up, surprised. "Already? Where to?" "Westfield London Mall," Jenkins replied, his tone clipped. "Something's gone down there, but we don't have all the details yet. Dispatch just called, and they want us on site ASAP." Harry felt a jolt of adrenaline spike through him. The Westfield Mall was one of the largest shopping centres in London, always packed with people. If something had happened there, it could be severe. "Do you have any idea what we're dealing with?" Jenkins shook his head, his frown deepening. "All we've got is that it's some kind of disturbance. Reports of strange behaviour, maybe a fight or something more. We won't know until we get there." Harry nodded, grabbing his coat and slipping it on. He reached for his badge and clipped it to his belt, trying to push aside the nagging thought that this could be connected to what he and Charlie had been investigating. It was too early to jump to conclusions, but his instincts were already high alert. "All right, let's get going," Harry said, standing up. "The sooner we're there, the better." Jenkins gave a curt nod and turned on his heel, heading for the exit. Harry followed, his mind racing with possibilities. Westfield was a prime location for something to go wrong, especially on a busy day. He needed to be ready if the disturbance was magical in nature, or worse, another attempt to reveal the wizarding world. They went to the parking garage and climbed into one of the department's unmarked cars. Jenkins took the driver's seat, his hands steady on the wheel as he navigated the busy London streets with practiced ease. Harry kept his eyes on the road, his thoughts drifting between the task and the mysterious incidents plaguing him for days. As they drove, the radio crackled to life with updates from dispatch. "All units en route to Westfield, London, be advised. Multiple reports of erratic behaviour and possible injuries. The suspect description is unknown. Proceed with caution." Harry exchanged a glance with Jenkins, who only grimaced in response. "Sounds like we might be walking into a mess," Jenkins muttered, his tone grim. "Wouldn't be the first time," Harry replied, though his mind was already working through potential scenarios. Could this be another instance of rogue magic, or was it something else entirely? There was no way to know until they arrived, but Harry's gut told him to prepare for the unexpected. They pulled into the parking lot a few minutes later, the massive structure of Westfield Mall looming ahead of them. Even from outside, Harry could sense the tension in the air. Shoppers were milling about near the entrance, some looking anxious, others on their phones, likely reporting what they had seen to friends or family. Security personnel were already on site, trying to keep people calm and away from the scene. Jenkins parked the car, and the two of them quickly exited, flashing their badges as they made their way toward the mall entrance. Harry's heart was pounding, but he kept his expression neutral, not wanting to give away any of his internal concerns. As they approached, one of the mall security officers hurried over, looking relieved to see them. "Thank God you're here," the officer said breathlessly. "It's a madhouse in there. People started freaking out, saying they saw things that couldn't be real. Some sort of apparitions or something. We've tried to contain it, but it's getting out of hand." Harry exchanged a quick look with Jenkins, his suspicion deepening. Apparitions? That didn't sound like a typical disturbance. It sounded like magic. "We'll take it from here," Jenkins said firmly, nodding to the officer. "Just keep people out of the area and let us do our job." The officer nodded, visibly relieved, and hurried back to his post. Harry and Jenkins pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the bustling chaos of the mall. The atmosphere was tense, with shoppers clustered in groups, talking in hushed tones, while others hurriedly made their way toward the exits. "All right," Jenkins said, his voice low as he scanned the area. "Let's find out what's really going on here." Harry nodded, his senses on high alert as they moved deeper into the mall. Whatever they were about to face, Harry knew one thing for sure. It wasn't just an ordinary day at the office. The Westfield London Mall was a sprawling labyrinth of shops, escalators, and corridors, and Harry could feel the buzz of panic in the air as they moved deeper into the building. The reports of apparitions had sent a ripple of fear through the crowd, and now, as he and Jenkins approached the central atrium, Harry could see why. A young man, no older than his mid-20s, stood in the middle of the atrium, his eyes wide with excitement and defiance. Around him, a small group of muggles had gathered, their expressions a mixture of disbelief, fear, and curiosity. The man had been apparating, disappearing and reappearing in short bursts a few feet at a time, right before them. "Bloody hell," Jenkins muttered as they neared the scene. "Is he doing what I see he's doing?" Harry felt frustrated as he watched the young wizard grin at the shocked onlookers. "Yeah, he is," Harry replied, keeping his voice low. "And he's about to make our lives a lot more complicated." As they approached, the man caught sight of Harry, and his eyes lit up with recognition. He pointed a finger at Harry, a broad grin on his face. "No way! Harry Potter! The Harry Potter!" he exclaimed, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I knew it! I knew you were still out there doing your thing!" Harry's stomach dropped. The last thing he needed was to be recognized in the middle of a crowded mall, especially by someone who clearly had no idea how to keep a low profile. Jenkins shot Harry a puzzled look. "You know this guy?" "No," Harry muttered, forcing a neutral expression as he approached the young man. "Let me handle this." The man babbled excitedly as Harry stepped closer, his voice carrying through the atrium. "You're a legend, mate. I grew up hearing stories about you, about what you did in the war. It's an honor to finally meet you." Harry cut him off with a sharp look, his voice calm but firm. "You've got the wrong person, mate. I'm just a regular police officer here to deal with this situation." The young wizard blinked, clearly taken aback. But you're Harry Potter. Everyone knows who you are." "I'm not whoever you think I am," Harry interrupted, his tone growing more insistent. "And if you keep talking like this, you'll get into much trouble." The crowd around them was starting to murmur, and some of the onlookers were exchanging confused glances. Jenkins, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation. "All right, folks. There's nothing to see here. Let's all move along and give the man some space." Harry shot Jenkins a grateful look before turning back to the young man, lowering his voice so only he could hear. "Listen to me very carefully. Whatever you think you know, forget it. You can't go around doing magic in front of muggles. It's dangerous, and you're putting everyone at risk." The young wizard frowned, his excitement fading as he realized the seriousness in Harry's tone. "But I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to—" "I don't care what you were trying to do," Harry said sternly. "You need to stop this now." Apparating in front of muggles is reckless and illegal. You need to leave if you don't want to end up in serious trouble. Immediately. The man's shoulders slumped, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. But you're really him, aren't you? He asked quietly, desperation creeping into his voice. You're Harry Potter. Why are you pretending you're not? Harry sighed, glancing around to ensure the crowd was dispersing before answering. What you think you know doesn't matter. What matters is that you stop drawing attention to yourself and get out of here before someone decides to report you to the Ministry. The young wizard looked torn, clearly struggling with the disappointment of meeting his childhood hero under such circumstances. But eventually, he nodded, realizing that Harry wouldn't budge. All right, he said softly. I'll go, but thank you for everything. Harry gave him a curt nod. Just be careful, all right? And don't let this happen again. With one last regretful glance, the young wizard turned on his heel and walked away, quickly disappearing into the throngs of shoppers. Harry watched him go, his mind racing with frustration and concern. Whoever this guy was, he was lucky Harry found him, and not someone less understanding. Jenkins, standing nearby, approached Harry with a raised eyebrow. Well, that was interesting. Any idea what that was about? Harry forced a casual shrug, slipping back into his role as a regular officer. Just some kid acting out, thinking he could make a scene. Hopefully he's learned his lesson. Jenkins nodded slowly, still looking slightly puzzled, but not pressing the issue. Let's hope so. The last thing we need is more of that kind of trouble. As they walked back toward the entrance, Harry couldn't help but feel a deepening sense of unease. This was the second time in a week that magic had nearly been exposed to the muggles, and it wasn't lost on him how dangerous that was. Something was brewing beneath the surface, and he had a sinking feeling that it would only worsen.